We've actually had some people who were so camera shy that said, you can record it, I don't want to be on camera.
Yeah.
So I sat in front of the camera and they sat over here and kind of waved every once in a while. So, all right, so my first question for you is, after thanking you for agreeing to be interviewed, is tell us a bit about what you do for a living and recreation, including what types of artistic and cultural activities you're involved with.
Sure. Well, I teach Pilates, a fair amount of Pilates on the island, and I teach a little bit of dance. I used to teach a bit more dance, and it's just kind of slowing down. I think there's a natural cycle on Bowen with classes where, for a while you have high attendance and then it sort of generally slides. But
Yep.
Pilates has been holding well, and dance, because I'm a contemporary dance artist, doesn't have that strong a following.
Right. Okay. Great. Other arts that you pursue kind of as on an amateur, just for fun basis?
No, not really, though I keep saying I'm going to take singing classes. And
Okay.
there's a lot of opportunities to do musical theater or adult theater with Turnanog, or musical theater with maybe there used to be more musical theater opportunities
Yeah.
with, like when Gail was here, Gail your own. But yeah, that's something that I wouldn't mind doing at some point in the future, but somehow I always seem to put it to the back burner.
Great.
Not
Okay.
for lack of opportunities, though.
Yep. Thank you. So the next one is to tell us a story of one of your most memorable cultural or artistic experiences on Bowen, be either as a performer artist or as an audience member.
Okay. Well, as a performer, I would say it was early when I lived here, maybe in the first 2 to 3 years, Mara Brenner, who used to live here, produced a show that I had been touring with my dance company around Canada. She produced it on Bowen Island, and it was called Breakfast Dance, the Link Breakfast Dance. Well, Link Dance was the name of the organization, and Breakfast Dance was the name of the show. And the London Song.
Match is mine. Thank you.
I bring it in cup. That's the London.
Yes, London.
So that show was premised on bringing the audience very close to the performers and having an interaction with the audience that was meaningful. Like, it wasn't just a lecture demonstration, which was for educational purposes, but in this particular show, it was for educational purposes, but then it was artistically kind of interwoven into the finale of the show, which was surprising, and it was like, yeah, it was a show that was designed around audience
One woman
proximity.
show?
No, it was a dance performance with 4 dancers and / narrator.
Are you going to bring it back?
What?
Are you going to bring it back?
I don't know. That's not a bad idea, actually. When I was thinking about what I was going to say to you, I was like, oh, that's funny. I have not thought about doing a show in that context since then. And that's largely because I'm not really producing dance as much right now in this stage of my life. But at that time, most of my work was happening outside of Bowen Island.
Right.
But Mara Brenner basically created Bowen Island almost as one stop along a tour,
Right.
which was really valuable to me as a company director, as an artistic director, to have one more stop. It made it financially more beneficial, like the tour itself, because the more engagements you have, the more you're spreading out the costs of the remount of the show.
Yeah.
It was really nice to perform my work within my home community. And what we did was we used Kate's Hill Chapel in an amphitheater kind of environment where you had seating on 3 sides.
Yeah.
And that's how the show was designed, so it worked really well. But short of that, you'd have to design a show with that proximity to be intentional.
Yeah.
And it has a limited audience, right? You can only have like 75-ish to 80 people
In
on the
Kate's Hill,
parameter.
you've got that many in the Kate's Hill
Yeah,
Chapel?
and you
Wow.
had 2 rows. You have to have rows of 2, so
Right.
that you don't have sightline issues. Because once people
Yeah.
go to the floor, once you're in the 3rd row, you can't see anything.
Right. Yeah.
But if it's the 2nd row, you can kind of look over the 1st row, and then you have visibility.
Yeah.
And if you pushed it back far enough and you had a row of seating on the floor, you could probably get up to 100. And Suzanne Philippe catered it. And, you know, so that was really memorable, partly because it was a real success, it was sold out, partly because it was really fun to share the work, but also, I mean, I think it speaks volumes about individuals in a small community.
Yeah.
Like, we lost Mara because she couldn't afford to live on Bowen, and because there were bylaw enforcements that really were not favorable to her family. And as a consequence, what we lost was someone who was able to produce and present dance in our community. Somebody else want to take that over, you'd have to be crazy or passionate, and she was crazy and passionate, so she did that.
Yeah.
So we lost, I think with each individual, we potentially lose or gain quite a commodity, right?
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that in our work so far.
5 minutes, 58 seconds, minutes.
I don't remember seeing that sign on there before. I don't know. I must have clicked some button by mistake.
Okay.
Anyway, but we're still going. As long as that red light's on, we're recording. Okay. What is the greatest challenge you face as a professional artist here on Bowen?
Well, I don't have much drive to do my work here because A, there's not a lot of dancers who live on Bowen.
Right.
B, it feels... but, you know, I don't know if it's such a reflection on Bowen. I go so hit a wall, I mean, not a wall, you know, hit some inroads in my personal life that made it really difficult to be married to my art practice. And right now I have a job. I'm a Pilates instructor. I go to work. I come home and I leave my work behind. I do training. I do a little class prep, and then I'm ready to teach. Whereas when I was making art, you know, when my art practice was my primary objective, I was doing it all the time. In my sleep, I was like choreographing dances and dealing with the frustrations and the fears around funding and blah, blah, blah. But I don't do that right now. And would I do it on Bowen? I did one project on Bowen, and it was fun. It was really fun. But Bowen doesn't believe in paying artists.
No.
So you have to do it basically.
You think they don't believe in it, or they just can't afford it?
There's a lot of people with money on Bowen Island.
Right.
So there's no patronage of the arts except for buying tickets.
Yeah.
So that would be one way. I mean, there's the Bowen Foundation, but maybe we could have a Bowen Cultural Foundation, you know, or Arts Foundation. But I think it's believe in it. I think somehow artists are always asked to donate to these fundraising causes, and that's how we attract a crowd. It's interesting, you know, it's our work, and we're paid very poorly for our work.
Yeah.
So then on top of that, to be the ones who are supposed to volunteer our time, and that one year when BowFest kind of like almost imploded because some of the artists were being quite rigorous about saying we need to be paid. I know it was very complicated, and I think it's because it hit up against a belief system.
Yeah, it is challenging. We've heard that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say that Bowen Islanders just don't appreciate the arts enough, and others say that we've got this challenge, and the people who have the time and appreciation of the arts have no money. The people that have the money are people that have no time. They're commuting back and forth to the island. They're not really involved in island life at all.
The people who have the money see art on the other side.
Exactly.
So they don't have an appetite. They don't have a need, you know, that needs to be filled.
Right.
So yeah, it's a complicated. Yeah,
It is.
it's a complicated.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I've read a lot of other cultural plans, and a lot of the small communities, they report the same thing.
Oh really?
Is that, you know, it's just, there's not enough gravitational mass to be able to do a lot of stuff locally.
Right.
So they just, sadly, they watch people drive up to the nearest large center
Yeah.
and pay them exorbitant amounts for their.
Well, there's a problem. I mean, that's added to that, which is that if you have like some of the world-class performances at the Push Festival, Chutzpah Festival, you know, in some Ballet BC, you know, you're looking at some world-class art projects, and then the next night of the same weekend, you're looking at something that's a little more homespun. You have to have an appreciation of diversity,
Yep.
or there will be a sense of dissatisfaction. So
Yeah.
I think that there's multiple layers of challenge.
All
But
right.
art builds community, and so if artists could be paid to build community through the arts,
Yeah.
I think that there would be some vitality in the arts community here.
All right. What's holding you back from participating in or attending more creative and artistic activities on Bowen?
Well, I see a fair amount of the things. The venues are not very attractive, and so I'm not drawn to too many shows. I actually like going to Tiernanog if they have a good sound person.
Right.
But if the sound person is asleep in the corner, which I've seen happen,
Yeah.
then the quality of sound at Tiernanog is not good enough to compensate for that.
Right.
And you know, the Legion, it's a beautiful, fabulous space for what it is, but it's not for
Yeah.
seeing theater.
Yeah. Right.
And I appreciate Graham Ritchie's efforts to create a really viewable stage every year with his Shakespeare production, so I go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I should see more music. Somehow I miss it. That's my own fault. I'm not really sure why. I need a better way of recording what's happening on Bowen, the music scene.
Right. Right. Well, it fascinates me that you were able to get that many people into Kate's Hill Chapel and found it a viable place for performance. My sense is that although everybody says we need a real full-time available quality performance space, my sense is that if we showed people more performance stuff on Bowen, even if it was like a marginally acceptable space, that would kind of create, oh, damn, wouldn't this be wonderful if we could do this in a larger...
Yeah, maybe. But the problem is, though, that we need it to be out and cleared because they have, church the next morning.
Right.
It's a multi-use space with a primary user, and so that has a real conflict with anything like a weekend performance schedule.
Right.
And you can't necessarily rehearse during the week, like set up your stage and rehearse for 4 days leading up or 3 days leading up to the show. You got to break it down every night. So
Yeah.
it's time inefficient, and this is all volunteer, right?
Yep.
So
Absolutely. When you think of arts and culture on Bowen, what person or place comes first to mind
when I think of arts and culture
on Bowen?
on Bowen,
What person or place?
the two people that came to mind right away are gone. One was Corbin, and the other was Mara.
Corbin Keith?
Corbin Keith and Mara Brenner.
Okay. That's interesting that they're both gone.
But maybe that's my generation, not in age, but in terms of when I moved to Bowen and who was happening at that time.
So no new icon no new icon for culture on Bowen to take over for.
Not yet. No, Graham is great. Graham is doing it year after year. I appreciate that about him. There was a guy named Joel here who was an amazing musician. He was working at IPS as a mentor, and he created some amazing plays with the kids there. He left. And then there's Imogen White lives here, and she's a other dance artist from the Vancouver community. I was super excited when she moved here to have another dance artist who's from that kind of contemporary dance world.
Right.
She's the only other one, though.
Great. Culturally, what do you think most differentiates us from Vancouver?
Well, I had a class. I was picking up my daughter from Tiernanog last night, and as I was leaving, I made a joke and laughed as I said to one of the instructors there, instructor owner operators, I gotta go now. I gotta take my daughter now so I can drive her home to get to a class to teach your daughter.
Yeah.
So there's an interweaving of the people, yeah. So we influence each other, and there's kind of a waving of the fabric, and
Which
that's
you can't
beautiful.
get in a big city.
No. In a big city, it's more specialized, and so when I go into a workroom in the big city, I'm in a culture, and a culture of other practicing artists who are thinking in ways that I think about the world. I'm not trying to kind of pull people along to think about the world the way I do.
I'm going to ask some of these in the opposite direction. So, how long have you been on Bowen, and what brought you here?
I've been on Bowen since 10 years this year. I moved here in 2006. I bought my house in March 2006. I mean, it closed March 2006. And we moved here because I was living in Whitehorse, which is a really fabulous place to practice art because there's funding and there's some other artists. But I was also coming down to Vancouver every winter and practicing my art here with both training and learning and doing work at a slightly higher level, and I really liked that. And when we thought about moving down to Vancouver area full time, it was hard to imagine living in Vancouver full time. For
Right.
my family, I could have. But my family, I think we needed a little bit softer around the edges. So initially I moved to Bowen to like live on Bowen and work in Vancouver, and now I work on Bowen.
Great. If you had to leave, what would you miss?
If I had to leave, what would I miss? I don't know. I think I would. There's a lot of things I would miss. I would miss a lot my lifestyle. There's some really. It's a tightly knit community. You know, you would miss. I would miss the people that I interact with on a daily basis. I would miss the ease of lifestyle here. You go one general place and you can do all your shopping. You go another general area and you get to work, and you go to another and that's where you hang out with your friends. I mean, I don't know. It's simple
Yep.
that way.
Great.
It's also I would miss the ease with which we integrate kids into our daily life. I don't feel that same struggle that I do in the city to either be with my child/family or with my peer group, like at a pub seeing music. Here, you don't have to choose so much.
Yeah. Great. In that 10 years, what's changed the most?
Me, really, I guess. I stopped commuting. And so now I'm more integrated into the community. I'm not just kind of a visitor when I come home. I know a lot more people. I use services on Bowen because I work here. And so I see people on a daily basis who I buy food from and blah, blah.
What's changing here now, for better or worse?
I don't know, a lot of people talk about how many new people there are on Bowen, but that doesn't really bother me so much. I think no matter where you live, you tend to hang out with the people who you met when you arrived. If it's a kind of a transient culture like Bowen sort of is. I know there are people who have been here born and raised, but a lot of people moved here 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you get the idea. People who moved here 10, 15 to 20 years ago are friends with each other.
Yeah.
That's each other's social group. People who moved here in the last 3 years, they're each other's social group. And 20 years from now, that's who they'll be hanging out with largely, unless they've left.
Reminds me of that Ron Woodall cartoon, where the people holding the signs.
Oh, yeah, right.
How long they've been on Bowen, and the sad people over in the corner who have signs with less than 5 years that haven't yet hooked up.
Yeah, and I think that they just feel like they haven't hooked up, but they've really begun the roots of their connections.
Right. Is there a particular type of artistic or cultural activity you'd like to learn more about?
I think I'd like to sing, like I said,
Yep.
but I just never make time for it. There's different teachers to sing with here.
So you'd like to learn professionally, not just sing for fun.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to sing for fun. but I guess I just don't make time because that's almost my problem. Is because I was a professional artist. There's a way that I don't actually make time or don't feel like being vulnerable enough to do something for the fun of it. Just as an amateur, I always maybe limit myself. I don't know. I don't know
Come to
if
the
that's
song
right.
circle on Monday night.
Exactly. There's no limit to my opportunities.
I showed up for that very reluctantly. It seems a little flaky, you know.
Yeah.
But it's just lovely to not only to meet these people, but just to be able to make these beautiful noises together, and
amazing.
not stressed about it or not worried about rehearsing for a performance. It's just
It actually brings up what you just said about Song Circle, brings up the issue for me that I forgot and I wouldn't have said, and that is that I think part of the wall, the barrier for me, is that I don't like doing things at night. I've always been a practicing artist for 20 years, and I do my practice during the day. I don't go to yoga at night. I don't go to Pilates at night. I only teach one Pilates class in the evening. I wouldn't sing I like it during the day because that's, to me, when I do those activities. And
nights for performance.
yeah, and being home. It's true. Or going and seeing music. I don't know. It's never been my time to take a class, and it limits me all the time.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts about Bowen's artistic or creative needs? Ideas, opportunities, things that you'd like to put on the record for us to think about in the culture plan?
Well, I really think I really think designated spaces are lacking, are severely lacking.
Yeah.
I think always having to fit yourself within the context of other primary needs and primary purposes diminishes the sense of commitment, diminishes how seriously you take yourself and your practice.
Yep. So if there was a space that was dedicated that would accommodate dance, you organize more things on Bowen.
Especially if it had been 5 to 10 years ago, and maybe in 5 years, 3 years from now, because I'm just starting. I just wrote my first Canada Council grant in 3 years. So I'm kind of re-emerging from a period of fallow due to some family needs. So I can't answer that question for today, but certainly 3 to 10 years ago, without question.
Right. And maybe in the future.
And maybe in the future.
All right. Any other things that jump out at you? Things that you said, damn, we should be doing this, or
I think we should be having. I think we should be trying to promote our own artists through festival type things. There was a while where we were doing those Sunday music in the park, Sundays at 4 or something like that in the summer, and you would go down and you'd hear this artist play, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know that guy was a singer-songwriter. Oh my God, he's amazing. I had so much fun listening.
Right.
But then it would be a regular time, and I think that's part of the reason why I always miss, like, Tuesday at 8 p.m. at this person's house, like I forget, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But if there was this regular engagement in the summer, I especially used to make it when I had a younger child. I wonder what would happen now.
Yeah.
But that would be one thing. And then to have a teen or youth series as well. Like, I think it would be really fun to have like 1 week, one of those Sundays, like a month, just be like a youth talent performance thing. So don't give them a whole hour, because I mean, quite honestly, there's going to be very few youth anywhere who are going to hold my attention for an hour.
right?
But if they had got to do 2 songs and they filled an hour together, brilliant, right? We would be seeing and supporting and encouraging their development, but within realistic context, like we're nurturing them rather than thinking that they're superstars because they have an equivalent slot
Right.
with someone who's been practicing their craft for 30 years
Yeah.
or even 15, I think it's important to support youth, and I think it's also important to not give them such an kind of exaggerated sense of themselves.
Right.
that it's unrealistic. They're not going to be able to go out. They're not going to be able to go out there and keep my attention for that long.
Sure.
And they're not going to be able to go out into the world and get a full, a full featured spot, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one idea, but that kind of thing where there's something that you can anticipate. Like we're all around for Both Fest weekend
Yeah.
because we know when Both Fest weekend is going to be. Some people avoid Both Fest, but that's because they know when it's going to be,
Yeah.
right? So there's a regularity of programming that I think we could really benefit from. I think that BIAC with their openings, they're good because you sort of know that it's going to be there's a method to the madness. You sort of know there's going to be a new show. You see that it's kind of the gallery's dismantled. Something new is coming up. There's going to be a Thursday opening, or I don't know, that kind of thing. Like you don't want to underestimate the value of regularity, and even in the postering and there's a look to the posters for this series, and you recognize. You don't even have to.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, there's going to be a Sunday series coming up this weekend, because you see the poster, and the poster is very recognizable. Like
Yeah.
those kinds of. I'm not inventing anything. Lots of arts organizations do this, right? You recognize it.
All right. That's the end of our questions.
Great.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah.